I just found a death threat on my doorstep with a photo of my son's treehouse. Karen's getting out of prison early and she's coming after my family again. Last year, I revealed how our HOA president electrocuted my son's treehouse while he was inside it, and how I shut down her operation using my position as Federal Safety Auditor. The video went viral, and many of you wanted updates. Well, here's a terrifying one. The nightmare isn't over. After serving just 1 year of her 3-year sentence, Karen Thompson is being released on a suspicious technicality. 3 days ago, I found a Polaroid of my son's treehouse with a red X drawn across it. The message on the back: "Some rules can't be broken. I'm coming back." My son still has nightmares and a scar from the electrical burns. Our community has flourished without Karen's tyrannical HOA rules. But now she's not just coming back with a clipboard, she's coming with powerful connections and a plan for revenge. What she doesn't realize is that in the past year, I've uncovered a nationwide network of HOA abuse. Welcome back to my channel. This isn't just an update, it's a warning. She's not just after me anymore. After Karen's conviction, my role at the Federal Safety Commission expanded dramatically. As stories of HOA abuse flooded in from across the country, I established a specialized task force focused on HOA safety violations. We uncovered patterns that would chill your blood. Community pools with deliberately faulty electrical systems after residents complained about rule changes, brake lines mysteriously cut after parking disputes, gas leaks engineered in homes of vocal HOA critics. Karen wasn't unique, just unusually sloppy. My son Ethan's recovery was slower than the physical healing of his hand. For months he wouldn't go near the treehouse, watching it from his bedroom window like it might suddenly attack. The child. Psychologist explained that electrical trauma creates a special kind of fear, invisible danger that strikes without warning. But by summer, with gentle encouragement and his friends' support, Ethan gradually reclaimed his special place. We rebuilt parts of it together, adding safety features and a lightning rod that made him giggle through his nervousness. "Even Thor can't hurt us now, Dad," he'd said, making me both proud and heartbroken. Pleasant Oaks transformed without Karen's iron fist. Neighbors who'd barely spoken now gathered for weekly cookouts. Mrs. Patel's culturally inconsistent roses won county recognition. The Johnsons' daughter could access her home with dignity on a ramp that was whichever shade of grey they damn well pleased. We'd converted the HOA into a true community association focused on solidarity rather than conformity. The community even pooled resources to help the Wilsons when their roof leaked rather than fining them for it. That's why the certified letter shocked everyone at last month's community meeting. Karen Thompson, former president of Pleasant Oaks HOA, will be released effective June 12th due to procedural errors in evidence handling and overcrowding considerations. My wife Jenny dropped her coffee mug, brown liquid splattering like blood across the community center floor. Robert Chen, the former HOA vice president who'd claimed ignorance of Karen's actions, turned ghostly pale. A procedural error? I'd personally ensured the evidence was ironclad. Something wasn't right. I called Officer Rodriguez immediately, but he'd been transferred to another district. His replacement reviewed the file with obvious disinterest. "Sometimes these things happen, sir. The system isn't perfect." That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, I logged into the federal database to review Karen's case. The judicial override had been initiated by Judge Maxwell Thornton, who'd recently purchased a vacation home in a luxury community with the strictest HOA in 3 states. Further digging revealed Thornton had connections to National Neighborhood Standards Association, a shadowy organization pumping millions into local elections to establish properly managed communities. Karen wasn't just a petty tyrant with a clipboard. She was connected. I spent the next weeks reviewing every case she'd been involved with before moving to Pleasant Oaks. The pattern was identical. She'd enter a community, gain control of the HOA board, implement increasingly restrictive rules, and target anyone who stood against her. When forced out, she'd simply move to another neighborhood and start over. Pleasant Oaks was the first time she'd faced consequences. When the Polaroid arrived 3 days ago, I immediately installed additional security cameras around our property. The second photo came yesterday, a close-up of our electrical box with a question mark drawn on it. The message was clear. Karen hadn't forgotten, hadn't forgiven, and somehow had access to our neighborhood despite not being officially released yet. This morning, Robert Chen called, his voice shaking. "James, I need to tell you something. Karen's been contacting board members from prison. She's formed something called the Community Standards Coalition. They've been meeting at the country club, planning to reinstate the old HOA rules the moment she returns. She's promised to make examples of those who dismantled her system, especially you." "How do you know this, Robert?" I asked, feeling cold dread pool in my stomach. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Because they invited me to join, said I could avoid what's coming if I help them. James, they've got blueprints of your house." I reported the threats to local police, but without proof of Karen's direct involvement, they could only file a report. My federal authority covered safety violations, not criminal threats. I was caught in bureaucratic limbo while Karen operated in the shadows. Then Ethan came home from school with tears streaming down his face, hyperventilating so severely I feared he was having a panic attack. Between gasping breaths, he explained that a woman had approached him at the school fence during recess. She said she knew all about my treehouse. He sobbed. Asked if I still got scared when the lights flickered. Dad, she knew about my nightmares. The school security camera confirmed my worst fear. Karen Thompson, supposedly still in custody, had been within 10 feet of my son. Her early release wasn't just coming. It had already happened, quietly and without notification to the victims. That night, as Jenny and I argued about whether to sell our house and move, the power went out. Not just in our home, but across the entire neighborhood. In the sudden darkness, our phones chimed simultaneously with a notification from the community message board. Pleasant Oaks residents. This is a notification that the Community Standards Coalition has assumed emergency management of neighborhood infrastructure during this unfortunate outage. Teams will be inspecting properties to ensure all electrical systems meet our updated safety protocols. Please allow representatives access to your property. Through the window, I could see flashlight beams sweeping across front yards as groups of strangers moved from house to house. This wasn't a coincidence. It was Karen's first move, using the darkness as cover to regain access to every home under the guise of safety. The ultimate irony. "They're not coming near our house," Jenny whispered, loading her father's old shotgun. With trembling hands, I placed my hand over hers. "No. That's exactly what Karen wants, to provoke us into doing something that could cost me my job or worse. I have a better idea." I called an emergency conference with my federal task force, authorizing an immediate investigation into the power outage. While the team assembled, I drove to the Pleasant Oaks electrical substation, where I found exactly what I suspected: evidence of deliberate tampering. The outage wasn't an accident. It was sabotage designed to create the crisis Karen needed to reassert control. What happened next unfolded with dizzying speed. My team arrived in official vehicles, lights flashing in the darkness. We deployed emergency generators to restore power to critical infrastructure, including streetlights and security systems. I used my federal authority to issue an emergency broadcast to all residents. "This is James Davis, Regional Director of the Federal Infrastructure Safety Commission. The outage has been classified as deliberate sabotage. Until power is restored, please remain in your homes. Do not allow anyone claiming to represent a community standards coalition to enter your property. They have no legal authority. Karen's plan to inspect homes under cover of darkness dissolved as lights blinked back on across the neighborhood. But she wasn't finished. As dawn broke, a convoy of matching black SUVs parked in front of the community center. Men and women in crisp uniforms began unloading equipment while Karen herself stood directing operations, clipboard in hand, just like old times. She'd shed her prison pallor for designer clothes and fresh highlights, looking more corporate executive than ex-convict. The coalition had brought their own generators, communications equipment, and what appeared to be surveying tools. They began marking property lines and photographing homes, focusing particularly on those with violations of Karen's old rules. When homeowners protested, they were handed professional-looking documents claiming legal authority under emergency powers granted to homeowners associations during infrastructure failures. I confronted Karen directly, recording our conversation as evidence. "This is illegal. You're impersonating officials and trespassing on private property." She smiled, not a trace of warmth reaching her eyes. "James, always so dramatic. We're simply a concerned citizens group helping during a crisis. I've been fully rehabilitated and my rights restored. Perhaps if you'd focused more on maintaining your neighborhood's electrical grid instead of persecuting dedicated community volunteers, none of this would be necessary." "The outage was deliberate sabotage," I said firmly. "Federal investigators have already collected evidence. Whoever is responsible will face federal charges." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, quickly replaced with practiced confidence. Accidents happen in aging infrastructure. Fortunately, the Community Standards Coalition has secured private funding to modernize Pleasant Oaks' systems, contingent, of course, on proper community management structures being restored. That was when I understood the full scope of her plan. The National Neighborhood Standards Association wasn't just supporting Karen, they were using Pleasant Oaks as a test case. If they could overturn federal safety rulings and re-establish control after documented criminal behavior, they could export the model nationwide, create crisis, offer solution, demand control in return. I needed to address the community directly. As Karen's team continued their intimidation campaign, I called an emergency meeting at the local elementary school. Nearly every resident attended, along with my federal team, local press, and, unexpectedly, Officer Rodriguez, who'd returned after investigating connections between Judge Thornton and the NNSA. "Pleasant Oaks residents," I began, "what's happening isn't just about Treehouse rules or property violations. We're witnessing a coordinated attempt to use safety emergencies as pretexts for surrendering community control to private interests." Presented evidence collected over the past year, financial transactions between NNSA and local officials, pattern recognition showing identical emergencies in communities across 3 states, all resulting in stricter HOA control by connected individuals. "Karen Thompson isn't acting alone," I explained, showing organizational charts on the projector. "She's part of a network that deliberately engineers crises to justify intervention. Last year, she electrified my son's treehouse. This year, it's a neighborhood blackout. Their playbook is to create the very safety hazards they claim to protect against." The room erupted as homeowners realized how they'd been manipulated. Mr. Patel stood up, normally soft-spoken but now visibly angry. "They threatened to cut off our water supply if we didn't remove our garden this morning. Said it violated new emergency water conservation measures." Similar stories poured out. Threats, intimidation, all under the guise of emergency management. The coalition had overplayed their hand, moving too aggressively because Karen's personal vendetta had clouded their strategic judgment. The meeting's climax came when Officer Rodriguez presented the results of his independent investigation. Judge Thornton had received substantial payments from NNSA subsidiaries before releasing Karen. The judge was now under investigation for judicial misconduct. As the evidence mounted, 2 coalition members in the audience quietly left the meeting. Karen remained, her expression hardening as her support crumbled. When she attempted to speak, defending her actions as necessary for community standards, Mrs. Johnson, whose daughter used the wheelchair ramp Karen had once cited as a violation, rolled directly up to the microphone. "My family's safety matters more than your standards," she said simply, generating thunderous applause. By meeting's end, we'd established a neighborhood watch program, documented all coalition activities, and filed for emergency injunctions against the group. Karen found herself surrounded by federal agents as she attempted to leave. "Karen Thompson," I said formally, "you're under investigation for infrastructure sabotage, violation of parole, criminal trespassing, and conspiracy to commit fraud. This time the evidence won't disappear." 6 months have passed since the failed coalition takeover. Karen and 12 NNSA executives are awaiting trial on federal charges. The investigation expanded to 37 communities nationwide, revealing a systematic corporate attempt to use HOAs as vehicles for profit and control. New federal regulations now limit HOA powers during emergencies and require safety certifications for all board members. Our neighborhood has become a model for community self-governance. The old HOA structure has been permanently replaced with an elected council focused on mutual aid rather than enforcement. Property values have actually increased as Pleasant Oaks gained recognition for innovation in community management. As for Ethan, the trauma hasn't disappeared, but he's channeled it remarkably. At 12 years old, he started a Kids Have Rights club at school, teaching children how to respectfully but firmly stand up to adult overreach. The Treehouse has become a meeting spot where they draft letters to school boards and plan community improvement projects. Yesterday, he traced the faint scar on his hand while we added solar panels to his treehouse roof. "Dad," he said thoughtfully, "I'm glad we didn't run away when Karen came back." "Why's that, buddy?" "Because sometimes you have to stay and fight for everybody, not just yourself."